On a night, we welcome back Mitchell Robinson. We also welcome back the basketball team that we fell in love with last year, the gritty, tough as nails basketball team that fought from the opening tip until the final buzzer. That is our basketball team, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Knicks Film School Postgame Show presented by BetUS. I'm DJ Zullo, and I am fired up after that one. That was the grittiest, toughest win of the season. Memphis is a good basketball team. And to go into that building and from the jump have the activity defensively and the fight to pull that game out. And there's a lot to get into. We'll get into all of it. I thought the Knicks' effort level and activity from the moment the game started was playoff level in terms of the intensity. Now, they couldn't get a defensive rebound, which sort of hurt their overall defense, but their activity, effort, and attention to detail, I thought was fantastic. I thought for the first time, I think maybe all season, we got the sort of defensive performance by the two great defensive wings, or at least that was what they were billed as coming into the year, in OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. And I think that's where I want to start here is you saw what they can do on both sides of the court, but especially on the defensive end. OG Anunoby gave Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot to handle. He sat on that left shoulder, forced tough looks. Triple J got some buckets to go, but a lot of that was with OG Anunoby off the floor. And then when OG got tired in the second half, Jackson was able to beat him a few times. But in general, OG Anunoby held up against a very good, huge power forward in Jaren Jackson Jr. 6 of 16 from the field. Awesome defensive performance by Anunoby. And of course, makes the huge three at the end on a fantastic pass by Jalen Brunson. And Mikal Bridges, give him credit to keep Ja Morant from going off completely. Held him to 9 of 22 from the field. Kept him in check. Got some help from Mitchell Robinson on a few possessions. We'll get into that. That was awesome to see. The fact that this team showed the level of fight needed to win a game like this against a real playoff team on the road makes this a huge moment for this ball club, because they've had plenty of victories this season against really good teams where they're shooting well or the other team is not performing well and they win going away. They did it against Memphis at Madison Square Garden. But to go on the road and get one of these wins is massive. Because this is the type of game where it felt in the moment like it was a playoff game. And they haven't had many of these this season. And it's huge for this team to have that belief, which I think we've all, as fans of this ball club, wondered if they possessed. The belief to win against the upper echelon teams. And I know this isn't the Celtics, the Cavs, or the Oklahoma City Thunder. And we're not even going to talk about those teams because you know what? We're going to live in the moment of tonight. We're going to revel in that win. Let's be present here and not worry about what hasn't happened yet. We know all that. Let's talk about what did happen. And you saw the two wings perform on defense as well as a pair in a game as they've played all season. You saw Jalen Brunson again make clutch plays down the stretch, a three to put them briefly up, 111 to 110. And then the amazing almost falling on the ground pass to OG Anunoby for the game-winning three. Once again, Jalen Brunson making big plays down the stretch. You know, Karl-Anthony Towns didn't have it in this game on both ends of the court. And it was, you wondered if that was going to be too much for this team to overcome. But it was the performances of their two wings, Jalen Brunson, and of course Deuce McBride, who I thought was per minute the best player on the floor for the Knicks. Maybe the best player in the game. Huge threes. That incredible dunk that I think got the lead down to 7 and sort of gave the Knicks a little momentum when they didn't really have it. I thought his defensive activity, getting in the passing lanes, deflections, just his usual impact on that end was there. I openly questioned Tibbs taking him out of the game at 106-106 with 4 minutes and change left, bringing OG Anunoby back in, because I did think Deuce McBride was that good. It warranted him staying in that game. But after thinking about it for a moment, you think about where the Knicks are on the defensive end in this game. Bridges had done a nice job against John Morant, and OG Anunoby was the matchup against Jaren Jackson Jr. So I understand it from that perspective. And then Josh Hart, his presence was needed to generate rebounding, and he needed to be in that game for the defensive rebounding aspect. But if you're gonna tell me that Deuce needed to stay in that game, I get it. Okay, that because he was, from the moment he entered the game, an impact player. Not just impact by his presence because of his spacing and just him being out there. Like, he was an impact because he put the ball in the basket and he made things happen on the defensive end. And in the second half, really, it wasn't just Deuce McBride in terms of the bench. Cameron Payne, Landry Shamet, huge in terms of their shot making. Knicks went 9 of 21 in the second half from 3. The Memphis Grizzlies, 0 for 10. That, my friends, is the ball game. And it's about time the Knicks got the shooting variance on their side. Memphis couldn't hit a shot. They literally didn't in terms of their 3-point shot making in the second half. Now, they more than made up for it with their efficiency at the basket. Knicks could not prevent them from scoring when they got into the paint, especially around the restricted area. It was maddening. I don't know what was more frustrating, watching the Grizzlies make layups or generate offensive rebounding. It was one of those two things. But credit to the Knicks for continuing to push through. That game could have gotten away from them in the second half, and it didn't. And I think it's a character win and one of a few they've had this season. So this is one I'm hoping they can build on in terms of their belief into what they can do, because they had to match a level of physicality and energy that this Grizzlies team just comes at you with in waves, literally waves of substitutions, fresh bodies, crashing the glass, pushing the pace. This was a classic game where on the road, you just let go of the rope in the second half. And we've seen the Knicks at times this year let go of that rope. But they didn't do it. Thanks to their wings, thanks to Deuce McBride's impact, the rest of that bench. Thanks to Jalen Brunson for making plays once again in the clutch. And thanks to the big fella, number 23, who from the moment he entered the game showed his impact. Mitchell Robinson was not himself athletically or in terms of his ability to not just see the play, but react to it. Like, he was a little bit slow in his reactions. That and one that he allowed to Brandon Clark in his first shift was a classic example of like him diagnosing it, but just being a little slow getting out to that floater. But you saw the ability to just deter shots at the rim. And for a Knicks team that has had a lot of trouble preventing high efficient looks at the rim, to just not even allow the shot attempt jumped off the screen. And then you saw the offensive rebounding. You saw the fake DHO and dunk. And then you saw a seal and left-hand finish. You actually saw two finishes by Mitchell Robinson that weren't dunks. And that has been a frustrating arc of his career in terms of his ability or inability to finish at the basket without a dunk. And he had two of those to go in this game. But it just felt like his size, presence, ability to occupy space was huge for this team in terms of them being able to have a deterrent, a person in that painted area making teams think twice. And we'll see about when Mitch has a longer leash, what that means in terms of his ability to play with Karl-Anthony Towns. But in terms of being your backup center and allowing this Knicks team to have someone back there helping out the entire ecosystem of this defense, and you saw that in the second half on a play where John Morant is your ball handler, Mikal Bridges is guarding the ball, Mitch is in drop. Ja gets that advantage off the screen, and instead of getting all the way to the basket, Mitch contains, forces Ja to sort of snake it, and that ability by Mitch to contain in the pick and roll allowed Bridges to rear contest and get a block. And I've talked about how that ability by Mitch can make Mikal Bridges a better pick and roll defender. And that was a clear example of that. And if you want to go to my Twitter handle, DJ Ace NBA, I posted that play on my feed just because I thought it was that important and a good sign for what this pick and roll duo specifically can be long-term. Because I do believe it'll make Mikal Bridges a better defensive player to have that ball contained big who at his best is one of a handful of players that can do it at that level in terms of containing in the paint and make those floater area decisions harder, whether it's contesting the shot or allowing his pick and roll partner on the defensive end to rear contest. I thought that was important. I thought Mitch's impact was clear. His plus minus on the night, let me pull that up because I know it was extremely high. And part of that, again, was due to Karl-Anthony Towns just not really having it on the night. Mitch was plus 11. Towns was a minus 10. So I know some of that was the Towns ineptitude. And I think the knee played a part in that on the Towns factor. Just didn't seem like he was moving well. And we've seen him rebound on the defensive end as well as any center in the NBA. So to see the Knicks hemorrhage off defensive rebounding time after time after time with Cat in the game leads me to believe that there was something physically that was keeping Towns from being his usual self on that end. But that plus 11 by Mitchell Robinson was not just the fact that he was playing for Karl-Anthony Towns. It was because he was impactful when he played. And on that final possession off the John Morant miss, it was Mitchell Robinson just being in the way and made that little tip by, I think it was Aldama, a little bit tougher. The ball rolled off the rim. Knicks get the win. Just a huge, huge win. And then I want to talk about quickly that three-pointer that Brunson made that made it 111 to 110, attacking Zach Edey in drop again. And the key thing there was Josh Hart, with who Edey was guarding, setting the screen, but flipping it at the last moment and getting Edey on the wrong side of it. So Edey was basically playing Brunson to Brunson's right hand, to his left hand. And when Brunson took the screen going to his right hand, Edey was on the wrong side because Hart flipped it at the last moment. Brunson was able to walk into a pull-up three, made possible by Hart's screening and the fact that the Grizzlies gave Brunson the opportunity to go against a drop big, which I thought was a terrible, terrible decision there. I wouldn't have had Edey in the game because you knew the Knicks were going to put him in the action. But credit to the Knicks and maybe this is just Hart and Brunson having that awareness to put the rookie in a spot where he thinks the screen's going one way and you flip it so you go the other, and there's no one to contain the Brunson pull up, and he makes it. Like I said, goes up briefly. Ja Morant gets the and one on the other end of the floor, but then Anunoby. And that Brunson pass, Anunoby gets the credit for the shot. But for Brunson to get to the paint after stumbling and almost going to the ground, and this was after having a couple knee situations pop up in the game late, but to almost fall, maintain his balance, which has always been Jalen Brunson's superpower, the ability to stay balanced when chaos and mayhem is occurring around him, when he has double teams and bodies bigger than he is, pushing him to the ground, knocking him over. He's able to stay on his feet, gets into the middle of the paint somehow, and has the awareness to find Anunoby on the left wing. And then credit to OG, who, in terms of effort and energy, put it all out there to still have the ability to make that three-pointer at the end. Huge amount of credit to him. And just credit to the Knicks as a whole, because this was a true team win in a way that I don't know we've seen it in the sense of winning a game where you're down in the second half, when the team that you're playing has sort of had an ability to poke at you in a way in terms of their offensive rebounding that was debilitating or could be debilitating mentally to a team, and you can't generate defensive rebounds and you couldn't stop them at the rim. But they kept pushing. They kept pushing and they stayed connected in the game. And it was the 3-point shooting, 9 of 21 in that second half, to figure out a way to get a just freaking massive win. I'm in danger, and I know it as I'm saying it, in danger of putting too much on a regular season game at the end of February against a really good, but certainly not a great basketball team. But you felt it in the moment that this was a playoff level competition. And the Knicks have won games, as I said earlier, Knicks have won games against this level of basketball team before, but they've done it in a comfortable way. And this was anything but comfortable. This was an uncomfortable fight. And I didn't know that this team had it in them to win these types of games. And it gives me confidence that this team can win fights and battles. There were a few metal bats being thrown around tonight, and there hasn't been many of those this season. Knicks got themselves into a fight, and in the 12th round, had the last left hook, had the last knockout blow. Ja Morant almost had the last one at the end, but the ball rimmed out. Heck of a win. And you really I wonder if we'll look back in a few weeks and think, yeah, that was the moment where things started to change a little bit in terms of belief in the fight. And this was one where you just had to believe you could win the fight. And the team did it. It wasn't just Jalen Brunson scoring 45 and making 7 threes. It wasn't Karl-Anthony Towns having a huge game and just being the elite offensive player that we know he is. The whole team had to pull their own weight. And those minutes, and we'll end it, we'll end the monologue here. The minutes by number 23 were good enough to support the other big fella, Karl-Anthony Towns, who just didn't have it on the night. But Mitchell Robinson playing center, being your backup was a huge reason why this Knicks team won that game. And if Mitch can just stay healthy long term, if he is going to be the backup center, what a luxury. What a luxury that would be.